We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time.
And also, Donald Trump was right when he said Nancy Pelosi admitted fault for not accepting Donald Trump's offer to send in the National Guard.
Responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. Should we call the Capitol Police? I mean, the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
No, there's not a question of how they have been. They don't know.
Yeah, shout out.
They clearly didn't know.
Shout out Shattering Illusions on TikTok, man. Always giving some good information, good research.
And I take responsibility for not having them just prepared for more.
Lie number 17, Harris says that Donald Trump incited a violent mob. Again, just covered it. Not true. Lie number 18, Harris claims that officers died in the line of duty on January 6th. This is false.
Hey, Gerard, we got you. Just send a timestamp. I was just waiting on a timestamp, and we could pull that up at any point. Go ahead.
Go to our, I'm going to say go to our shorts. Because it is funny, though. You got to love it. You got to love the cap. You got to love how hard Kamala... Like, bro, you got to love the cap. You got to love the cap. How hard Kamala's won the cap. And you just seen some lies debunked there, but let's take it a step further.
Since ABC refused to do it, the U.S. military fact-checked Kamala Harris themselves.
America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day. We were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world this century. What? But let's understand.
So where the fuck are we right now?
Since ABC refused to do it, the U.S.
soldiers talking about, well, where the hell we at? What we doing?
I mean, like, damn, I guess we just doing nothing, guys. Like, hey, hold on, we need to call
play date. Like,
hold on, man, we need to call Starlight Shard. Hey, Kamala said we're not even here, so what are we doing here?
Like, bro, I left my family for this. What are you talking about?
Like, what's going on? But hey, though, hey, y'all let Kamala get away with anything. Kamala doesn't lie. You know, even if the military tells you, even if the citizens of Springfield tells you, you will still believe Kamala Harris's lie. Even if the citizens of the U.S. tells you that she's lying. Ain't it crazy?
Lie number 19, Harris alludes that Trump was charged with an insurrection. Again, this is simply not true. Lie number 20, Harris perpetuates the Charlottesville hoax, even though it's been debunked time and time again, including by yours truly. In actuality, he denounced it an hour and 49 minutes after the events, and then 2 times after. Here's what he really said.
And you had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. And I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
Lie number 21, she claims that Donald Trump told the Proud Boys to, quote, stand back and stand by. So this is partially true, but there is a little bit more nuance to it than meets the eye. Donald Trump was asked by Chris Wallace during a debate in 2020 with Biden if he would denounce white supremacy and militia groups and tell them to stand down. Trump misspoke and said stand back and stand by, leading to confusion and people to think that he is affiliated with the Proud Boys, of which he is not.
Shout out Mike G.
$2. Rubber Ducky 08 is back. I'll be honest, I don't even know who the hell that is. Who is that?
Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared
to
specifically
do it?
Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. You want to call them? What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
who would you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and
Proud Boys. Stand back and stand by.
Even though they are not a white supremacy group to begin with, their leader, Enrique Terrio, is actually of Afro-Cuban descent.
This is the leader of the Proud Boys. Yes. You call that a white supremacist group? Enrico Terrio, man. Bro, really? This is the leader right here, guys. Oh, God. It's crazy. We show these videos to Kamala supporters, and you know it's fun. They're just too afraid to see the truth.
Afro-Cuban.
Line number 22. The non-biased moderators claim that Donald Trump's remarks about winning.
Yeah, really. Depending on who you ask, that might is a black man.
That is crazy,
man.
the 2020 election are completely false, and that also more than 60 cases were seen by many judges and all dismissed. The truth is that no judges actually looked at these cases, and there's actually quite a lot of substantial and tangible proof to show that there was voter fraud and tampering of evidence. Again, this is a huge can of worms, and I plan to make a dedicated video to this topic alone at some point, so stay tuned. Lie number 23, Harris peddles the bloodbath hoax. Trump never said if he didn't win there would be a bloodbath. What he said was there would be an economic bloodbath in the auto industry.
We're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it.
Lie number 24, Harris claims that Donald Trump would be a dictator on day one. Again, this is just absolutely false. It stems from a town hall that he did with Hannity a few months back when he claimed that he would be a dictator on day one because he would shut down the border and drill, baby, drill. This was said jokingly, and it was very obvious in jest to anybody with a room temperature IQ.
Says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one. We're closing the border, and we're drilling. After that, I'm not a dictator.
So that sounds to me like you're going back to the policies when you were...
This is just a political ploy. Trump is a dictator. He wants to be a dictator. You're not going to be a dictator, are you? Tell me. I said, I'm going to be a dictator for one day. We're going to do two things. The border, we're going to make it so tight you can't get in unless you come in legally. And the other is energy. We're going to drill, baby, drill. After that, I'm not going to be a dictator. So I said, I'm going to be a dictator for one day. They cut it. They go, I'm going to be a dictator.
Bro, we have a legislative, an executive, and a judicial branch to stop dictators in our country. A constitution that doesn't even allow for that. So for him to say that, and for y'all to really believe it, take it out of context and say, oh, well, he's going to be a dictator. Like, first of all, play the full clip. He was joking. Second of all, do y'all not know how our government and its branches work? There's a checks and balance system.
That's the whole reason why we have the Second Amendment.
Like,
I mean, it's the right to bear arms against a tyrannical government and the right to militia. It work hand in hand to prevent a dictator.
Come on.
They cut the rest of the sentence. No. I am not going to be a dictator. I'm going to manage like we did.
25, Harris claims that Trump told Putin, quote, you can do whatever you want and you can go into Ukraine, end quote. This is simply not true. There is no evidence to support this wild-ass cockamamie claim, none whatsoever. Line number 26, Harris claims that Trump and Kim Jong-un exchanged, quote, love letters. This one is just kind of elementary and a little silly. So the actual truth with this is, yes, Donald Trump made a joke about this years back in 2018 during a rally, claiming that him and Kim Jong-un used to be at each other's throats, and then they started exchanging letters, and then they fell in love.
I was really being tough, and so was he. And we would go back and forth, and then we fell in love. Okay? No, really. He wrote me beautiful letters, and they're great letters. We fell in love. But you know what? Now they'll say, Donald Trump said they fell in love. How horrible. How horrible is that? So unpresidential.
It was a joke. It was said in jest, but Harris was trying to insinuate that it's because both of them are dictators and they bonded over being dictators again. That's simply not true. In fact, there was a point in time where it was getting very tense between the United States and North Korea, but then Trump broke peace and became the very first U.S. president to ever set foot on North Korean soil, which I think is a good thing. I don't know about you guys, but I tend to lean towards peace. Lie number 27, Harris claims that Putin and other dictators are rooting for Donald Trump to get back in office, but the funniest thing is that Putin actually came out and recently endorsed Harris. Line number 28, Harris claims that there are no active duty troops in any combat zone anywhere around the world for the first time in a century. This is false. I'm going to be looking at my notes here. There are currently active duty U.S. troops deployed to Iraq and Syria who have been under frequent attack by Iran-backed militia forces over the past year. There are also thousands of active duty U.S. sailors deployed to the Middle East who are facing drone strikes. And just earlier this year, 3 U.S. soldiers were killed on the border of Syria by Iran-backed forces. Line number 29, she claims that Donald Trump called for the death of the Central Park Five. So again, I've already debunked this.
Well, we've debunked this.
Epic debunking that I mentioned earlier. I go
Pulled up the article and everything.
Yep.
He said he wants the neighborhood to be safe for all families, for all races of people, black, white, Asian.
He never mentioned the Central Park 5 in the article at all, or in the ad at all that he put out.
I mean, it's something that we could all probably stand by if you remove your political bias. Like, rapists, he called for the death penalty. Like, hell yeah.
I'm for it. I'm like, oh, rapists get the death penalty. I
yeah.
love it. He said drug dealers get the death penalty. Why not?
Oh, yeah. Turn it up.
Much
sounds
more
like
in depth
St.
there,
Trump.
but again, I will just briefly say there is absolutely no proof that Donald Trump called for their execution. Did Donald Trump think they were guilty? Yes. Does he still think that they're guilty even though they were legally exonerated? Yes. Does that mean that he actively called for their execution? No, it does not. Read the article in its entirety. Don't listen to other people tell you what it says. Read what it says. Lie number 30. She claims that her and Joe Biden capped the cost of insulin at $35. Again, I've already debunked this and covered it before, but I'll cover it briefly once more. Donald Trump was the one to cap the cost of insulin at $35.
It's just $35 a month per type of insulin.
May 2020.
And some plans may offer it free.
It took the Kamala Harris
May
administration and her
2020.
advisors 4 years to be like, you know what, that sounds like a
great
good concept. Let's add that in. Let's scratch his name off.
That's a great concept of a plan.
Bro, and the gaslighting is real, bro. They came up with or adapted the policy and then try to say, well, we were the first to do it.
Bruh.
Hold on.
I lie again.
Like, bro, that's why videos like these is... bro, as much as y'all want to grill us for looking at a TikTok video, like the man's done the research. Shout out Shattering Illusions. Like the video is right here for all of us to see and observe. Like, well, damn, May 2020, July 2024. Like, you know what? Damn, I didn't even know Trump had that stance.
So for everybody who's getting ripped off and paying tremendous prices, senior citizens, is a tremendous saving.
It is President Biden and I that took on Big Pharma and finally capped the cost of insulin for our seniors at $35 a month. But Donald Trump and his running mate intend to get rid of our $35 cap on insulin.
Lie number 31. Harris claims that she is fine with
initiative.
private insurance, but her comments in the past would suggest that that is a flat-out lie.
Follow up on that, and correct me if I'm wrong. To reiterate, you support the Medicare for All bill. I think initially co-sponsored by Senator Bernie Sanders. You're also a co-sponsor on it. I believe it will totally eliminate private insurance. So for people out there who like their insurance, they don't get to keep it?
F you.
Well, listen, the
That's
idea
what she's
is
saying.
that everyone gets access to medical care. Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
And finally,
So, to translate, universal health care. See how well that's working out for Canadians.
I mean,
lie number 32, she claims that her and Joe Biden created 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. This is simply not true. The BLS shows that 592,000 of those manufacturing jobs were recovered from COVID. Donald Trump alone created 414,000 of those manufacturing jobs, and the Biden-Harris administration only created 173,000 new manufacturing jobs. When you factor in all of her bullshit lies, Kamala Harris...
Bro, she just prays on the fact that y'all will never look it up for yourself. I mean, you know, let's go to the
where it is
shorter
legal
video.
to kill a baby.
He will sign a national abortion ban.
It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban.
Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor.
What she says is an absolute lie.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
Nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion.
The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mothers.
Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy. We're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected. Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath.
Let's remember Charlottesville. There were fine people on each side.
Very fine people on both sides. And I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
Tim Walz and I are both
Ah, man, the biggest lie debunked right there.
Oh, God.
I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists. I'm going to condemn them completely. They don't play that part of the clip.
Oh, God. But there's good people on both sides.
Like,
That's
come on.
hilarious to me,
Come
though.
on.
It's the craziest lie because it's just like, really? Like Charlottesville, you still saying that?
Bro, he's even
Project 2025, y'all still saying that?
But in that statement, he's even standing by the liberals, saying like, yeah, everybody has the right to freedom to assembly, like freedom to protest. Like, yeah, good people on both sides out there talking their shit, letting their voices be heard as a citizen with concerns. I ain't talking about the radicals. I ain't talking about the nationalists. I'm gonna condemn them. But the good people on both sides, yeah, there was good people on both sides.
All right.
We're not taking anybody's guns away.
Let us finally pass an assault weapons ban and universal
shattering illusions. Shattering
and
illusions.
red flag laws.
Shout out Shattering Illusions, man, on TikTok. On TikTok.
And y'all make sure to follow us on X, man. We got some good memes and videos over there that YouTube would never allow us to post. So yeah, follow us on X.
Often viewed as the most powerful person in the world. Whoever wins the presidential election carries an enormous amount of strength as the president. But in reality, what real power do they actually have? It seems like more and more today, the US president doesn't have as much power as you may think. Maybe they did 100 years ago, but the world has shifted, and so has the American system. And as many of you will be aware, there are much darker forces in power. People who remain in power for decades, people you've never heard of. A handful of people making decisions that are out of President Trump's or Kamala's hands, and the public will never know who they really are. So then who really has the power in America? And does the election even matter if the president doesn't have the power?
Something to leave y'all with people? As we kind of wind down.
How did it ever get like this?
I want to provoke some
what happens if we...
Y'all chime in the chat, man. Like I said, as we wind down, definitely care to hear from y'all on this. Shout out Moon, always offering a good perspective. This is definitely a neutral channel for the most part. It just kind of gives you some insight into our political game or our political climate.
We land in a future war. We'll find out with today's sponsor, Conflict of Nations, a real-time grand strategy game where you take command of a modern-day nation in a World War III scenario. This isn't your use terra-offensive research. This adds so whether it's lasting.
I'll play RPG, I guess.
Play corruption. In 1961, President Eisenhower gave his farewell speech, during which he took the opportunity to recognize the need for America's growing military power, but he warned of the disastrous rise of misplaced power that could come out of what he described as the military-industrial complex.
We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society.
He was referring to a well-oiled machine of military men in the defense industry where weapon manufacturers and equipment for the military directly influence foreign policies, as well as national defense policy. And unfortunately, later generations didn't heed his warning at all. And today, the military-industrial complex consumes more than half the federal discretionary budget every year. In 2023, the proposed budget for the Pentagon and nuclear weapons work at the Department of Energy alone was $886 billion. A report in April of the same year estimated that taxpayers spend an average of $1,087 on weapons contractors annually. So why is so much money spent going to weapons, and how are they...
Whoa, let's scroll that back some. The average taxpayer spends $1,087 on the Pentagon contracts for Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed. Yeah, all these companies that purport our military industrial complex that make the bombs, make the weaponry, send it over to Ukraine, Israel. Yeah, they need us to run. And you're telling me that every taxpayer, the average taxpayer, is paying $1,000 plus on this shit? Bro, who signed off on this? Like I said, bro, if you poll the average American, if you just go around, ask your neighbor, ask the guy at the corner store, like, bro, do you want to be involved in these proxies? Did you know that you're spending $1,000 on this average per year? Bro, you're going to get a fucking crazy. You'll probably get an angry response from most people. Like, what? $1,000? Like, hell nah. Like, bro, no. What the hell? Most people don't even know. Most people aren't even aware how much this is costing the average person or how this affects the average American. So it is kind of crazy. Our government just does this shit on our behalf without really checking in with us.
$7 on weapons contractors annually. So why is so much money spent going to weapons, and how are they even more powerful than the president in dictating war? Well, war is very lucrative. It's one of the best ways to make money. It creates jobs and keeps factories open. So it's easy to see why weapons manufacturers get behind a policy to ensure that war continues every year.
3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations.
Through lobbying and the revolving door phenomenon, the military officially often takes up positions in the defense industry, and then justifies perceived threats whether they carry weight or not. It makes sense for America to build up its military during a time like the Cold War, when tensions between it and the Soviet Union were running high. There were dozens of weapons contractors to go to, meaning competition was fierce and prices were fair. However, today, even though America isn't actively at war with another country, the government seems dead set on finding a reason to continue weapons production at an exponential rate. The whole situation is just made worse because the number of companies the government contracts to produce weapons has shrunk to just 5. Sure, there is still competition between the companies, and there were issues like we see in the War Dogs movie, where dodgy companies would start supplying the military.
No, I wouldn't even say there's competition. I would say these companies, these 5 companies that they've listed, have completely monopolized the military game, the weapon game, and they're the only ones profiting, and they have incentive to keep these wars going, and best believe they're lobbyists in our country, in our government, and they have influence on our major politicians. So when you see us always involved in the next proxy, when you see, honestly, anytime you see, bro, I got to word this specifically, but anytime you see allied countries of ours dropping bombs on another country, yeah, they're making money. It's as simple as that.
Obviously, this had to stop, but this means that the Pentagon can only do so much against being overcharged for weapons of war. America isn't building weapons because it needs to. It's building weapons because 5 companies that make massive financial contributions to their preferred candidate's campaign profit from building unpredictably dangerous products. And as long as the government continues to lean on these companies for financial support, they will always maintain their power and push for more war across the world to ensure more profits and more power in and of itself, further pushing this never-ending cycle of war. But this power has also been further assisted by intelligence agencies, who keep important information out of political conversations. We all know that intelligence agencies like the CIA and many others gather information so that the government can stay ahead of the game. This information is meant to assist in making informed decisions. The president gets a detailed report daily from the CIA.
So different intelligence organizations are prioritized to collect certain types of intelligence. And then within the confines of how they collect, they're also given unique authorities. Authorities are a term that's directed by the executive branch. Different agencies have different authorities to execute missions in different ways. FBI can't execute the same way CIA executes, and CIA can't execute the same way NGA executes. But then at the end, excuse me, when it's all collected, then yes, CIA still acts as a final synthesizing repository to create what's known as the president's daily brief.
And while this report is sometimes over 100 pages long, an assistant will always brief the president. The CIA also gets its information from the FBI and other agencies. Often, as we've seen recently, many intelligence agencies come together and share all of their information together, whilst also controlling who receives relevant information, and as a result, how important policy decisions are made. There are also concerns about surveillance overreach and its potential to be used for political purposes and influence political outcomes. As we've seen with people like Edward Snowden, those concerns have gained much validity. After so many instances have happened where the CIA kept things hidden from Congress and sometimes even the president to make sure certain outcomes happened. Now, the CIA's got an awful history. We've actually spoken.
And before he even gets into that, yes, the CIA has a history of acting on their own behalf, acting in their own interests, like aside and independent from our government or any other intelligence agencies. They've been known not to share intelligence or information with other agencies. They've been known to say one thing or purport one story to our government and its officials while also doing something else in the background. So when people say drain the swamp, when people say look into the bureaucrats, when people say these people need to be fired, that certain intelligence agencies need to be dismantled or reformed, the accusation is fair. Like, we can't have any company or any entity or any American affiliated intelligence agency operating on their own behalf within our country. That's acting against the interests of the American people. They're supposed to be protecting us, but they've kind of went rogue in a sense.
Spoken about it before in this video here, but in 2009, it actually came.
And their power and influence is immense. Blank check. And they, like I said, completely went rogue in a sense. So it's a very dangerous thing, and it's gotten out of hand. And honestly, the CIA has always purported its own interests, and it's always dealt with. It's always found a way to deal with circumstance and it's always found a way to deal with circumstance by their own volition, but it needs to be checked. Unchecked power is probably the most scary thing that one of these intelligence agencies can have.
Came out that several directors of the CIA had withheld
They've always had an
information from
operation, whether it be MK Ultra, whether it be COINTELPRO, right? We can go down the list, but nowadays it's, speculating, but nowadays it's probably our phones, social media, and how they influence us, cultural subversion. We could really go down the rabbit hole of conspiracies, but again, unchecked power for these intelligence agencies is probably one of it's a national security threat. I'll even just sum it up as that.
Congress about an unnamed covert program for 8 years. It was rumored to have been an assassination program, and according to a report from the Wall Street Journal, based on what they were told by former intelligence officials, the program had been an attempt to capture or kill Al-Qaeda operatives. And whilst this might sound good on the surface, it does raise some questions about the power they have in influencing political decisions and even war itself, far overcoming the power of just the president alone. However, this was nothing compared to what happened in 2017, when the CIA revealed just how much influence they could potentially have over the government. In February of that year, it came out that the organization had refused to share intelligence with the then President Donald Trump, for fear this might get leaked after his team made contact with the Russian government. Tensions were already running a little high between the agency and the former president, after several officials left because they refused to work under him, so this new revelation was just adding fuel to the fire. While the information kept from him might not have been particularly important or something necessary for him to know, it definitely opened people's eyes to the idea that the president might not have known everything going on behind the scenes, and the very real possibility that vital information could be kept from the president if agencies like the CIA decide to keep it under wraps, all because they just don't trust the president, meaning they overall have far more power. And that begs the question, who even runs these intelligence agencies? Almost nobody.
And like I said, bro, these CIA intelligence agencies will also create a narrative. Honestly, the term conspiracy theorist was created by the CIA. Yes, the term conspiracy theorist was created by the CIA, and it was done so to, what's the word I'm looking for? Discredit people who comes out with countering narratives or countering stories to go against what they say in the media or what the CIA has fed the media.
Knows their names, and yet these people may have actually more power than the president. And yes, no single man should be left with the responsibility of a massive amount of power, but a government secret agency also shouldn't be able to withhold information that could change the political landscape, and even the entire geopolitical landscape and future wars to come. But unfortunately, this is one way that the government, and particularly the president, really doesn't have any power, as there are just so many examples of private companies taking advantage of the vulnerable to maintain their high profit margins. Take Monsanto for example. Any presidential efforts made to change food production and safety in America have been hindered by Monsanto's dominance in the industry. It's the reason why America's food is so bad compared to European standards and many other countries across the world, as Monsanto's control extends to patented genetically modified seeds, which makes it almost impossible to ever act against them, as they own almost all of the seeds. This influence stems from Monsanto's lobbying activities that
Monsanto owns damn near all of the seeds. The FDA is supposed to regulate the food administered to us. It kind of seems like these bureaucratic agencies operate in their own interests, like even aside from the CIA, like any of these bureaucratic agencies that are supposed to uphold the best interests of the American people, help us out, keep us healthy, keep us safe. It kind of seems like they have their own interest. It kind of seems like they'll follow wherever the dollar is, who the highest paying bidder. Because Monsanto's pockets is deep, so you don't think they have influence over the FDA? You don't think the CIA has influence over the deep state? And vice versa? Come on now.
Sway Congress and regulatory agencies such as the FDA and USDA, and accordingly any efforts by the president to alter farming methods to elevate food safety or decrease corporate dominance encounter opposition from this established corporate power, making it almost impossible to ever enact meaningful changes without backing from lawmakers. And the pharmaceutical industry is yet just another example of this. Big Pharma has a massive effect on so many people's lives, and some people don't even realize this until they need to get medication or a hospital bill. Unlike other countries, America's federal government doesn't regulate drug prices, allowing manufacturers to price life-saving medication as high as they want without any consequence to themselves. This level of freedom infamously led to Martin Shkreli buying the rights to a drug like Daraprim, which is used to treat malaria and severe infections caused by HIV, and he infamously raised the price for this from $13.50 to $750. Everyone memed this, he became famous for it and showed no remorse for doing so, even commenting that if he could go back, he would have increased the price and that his utmost concern was creating a profit for his shareholders. But whilst this might
Yeah, and that's how these pharmaceutical companies make a lot of their money. They buy a drug, or they buy another company who has trademarked their drug or patented their drug, I wanted to say. And yeah, they hike the price because now they've cornered the market. They're the only maker of said drug, and now they can set the market for the price of said drug. And it's how these pharmaceutical companies make billions upon billions of dollars. It's dirty tactics, honestly, and that's why big pharma a lot of time faces the criticism it does, is because it's predatory. Like, this is medicine that people need to stay alive. This is medicine that people wouldn't survive without, but they're more so concerned over a profit rather than actually helping or providing medical service and care to people. It's sick, really. It's a sick game.
Might just be one strange example. This is actually a widespread phenomenon across America, and all of us saw how much power companies like Pfizer truly have over America during the pandemic. It's clear that disease and suffering is immensely profitable for these companies.
Hey, and all I'm gonna say to that is, because you know that's a banned topic on YouTube, really speaking on the quote unquote jab, but Pfizer, Moderna, man, count your days, man. Y'all gonna have to answer for what y'all did to the Americans, to the world, really. Y'all gonna have to answer one day. Fauci as well, man. Everybody's gonna have to answer for everything that they did during COVID. And I ain't gonna say too much more than that, but there will be a judgment day. I ain't gonna lie. And I ain't even getting religious. I'm just talking about there will be a day where everybody has to answer for their actions.
They want more and more vulnerable people. They profit from a country that's sick from poisoned foods, a stressful work environment, and legal drug addictions, as they would rather profit off of vulnerable people through absurd prices than assist the vulnerable. And this is proved time and time again by the fact that while many pharmaceutical companies use their profits to fund research into new ways to treat deadly diseases, most of the time these profits are just going back into purchasing stocks. This combination of negotiations with insurance companies over rebates, patents that prevent other drug companies from selling the same drugs at lower prices, and the lack of inclusion of the government leads to insane prices compared to other countries, especially if you don't have any insurance. In more recent years, things have gotten even worse because agencies like the FDA are now on pharmaceutical companies' payroll, meaning they are making a profit and might be more lenient with the drugs that come through from these companies, showing that inadvertently, Big Pharma almost just controls the government completely. They have almost all the power, and they can advertise themselves everywhere.
America is brought to you by Pfizer. CBS Health Watch, sponsored by Pfizer. Anderson Cooper 360. Brought to you by Pfizer.
Where Big Pharma is allowed to advertise drugs like antidepressants on the screen. But how are they allowed to promote drugs so openly and market them, all whilst controlling the FDA themselves? Well, it's just because of how powerful their lobbying efforts really are, often trying to convince the government that them charging ridiculously high prices for drugs that treat life-threatening diseases is fair because those that need it are paying for life. Never mind the fact that many go into crippling debt to pay the exorbitant prices. While pharmaceutical companies in America don't have a direct say in how the country is governed, they do.
So I say, bro, it's the lobbyists. They got immense influence on our government officials, and a lot of times the decisions that our government officials make are only aligned with said lobbyists. Like, I mean, think about it. You're a government official. You got the power. You can help the people, or you can take this $50 million wired into multiple bank accounts to make laws that help said lobbyists behind you in your ear funding you. It's for most of us with a moral code, it's a simple decision to make, like, no, fuck off. But you got to understand, these politicians are in the business of making money. You don't become a career politician to stay broke or to stay at 50K a year. Like, they are incentivized by money. And a lot of times these lobbyists know that. They'll fund them. They'll load their account up with whatever money, a blank check at some times and at some points, and ultimately they're able to reign freely. Think about it. They have almost full control, or I would say immense influence, just equally as on they have equal influence on government officials as they do on bureaucratic agencies such as the FDA. So they're running with unchecked power. They're running with no balance, right? Now it seems like as the system is constructed that they would have to go through these avenues. They would have to get certain things passed. They would have to, get certain things checked out. But again, when you fund the system, when everybody's bought out, you can do as you please.
do affect a major aspect of it. However, some companies like BlackRock and other Wall Street funds are completely working themselves into governments and making the government reliant on
Mike
them,
G.
where people have no idea what's really happening with this company or the leadership, and yet they're controlling major decisions in the country. BlackRock also participates in lobbying and donations, of course, but while they don't directly contribute, as this could cause some issues, its staff and executives do the work behind the scenes. Now, BlackRock tries to keep silent in the shadows instead of bringing any attention to their power. It's why almost nobody hears of it, and this is to their advantage to keep their dealings quiet. Yet BlackRock is just one company. Whilst being one of the most infamous, there are a ton of other companies just like BlackRock that are influencing politicians to—
Hey, and shout out Riley Small, $5 Australian. It's more of a bribe if you are the majority funder of all the news outlets, including Fox. There are no reporters will talk about the bad things bro. Producers will literally tell the journalists what stories they could cover and what stories they could put on TV. It's been multiple accounts of this. Because when you're bought, when you're influenced, when your whole outlet is funded by some of these lobbyists or some of these people who have direct call, the shot callers, I'll call them. When your whole media outlet is funded by a shot caller and they don't want a certain story being reported, but if you report this story and you really hammer it in all week to voters or to American viewers, and then you stand to make money off of the decisions that a viewer will make, ultimately because of the decision. So when you propagandize the viewers and you stand to make money after they've been inculcated, that's exactly what goes on. That's exactly the system we live within. You know, these companies, these conglomerates, the people in control of the media outlets, they stand to benefit from how viewers take the information, receive the information, and ultimately it influences our lives, our spending habits, how we raise our family, our worldviews, our ideals, I should say. So when you look at the influence that it has on the average American citizen's life, it's immense. It's immense. They have a lot of control and a lot of influence, and it's easier when they control all the medias. And social media companies, all the same. So anywhere you go, it's almost hard to turn from their influence.
Through lobbying and donations. When their interest in one policy might change to the company's detriment, it's easy to imply they will pull their support, and this can and will quickly change the politicians' minds. And since BlackRock is essential for other companies, it can will and deal with the government and companies to get favorable outcomes, all with almost no risk factor for BlackRock. If a company backs out, there are many other companies to replace their influence, and the government will play ball with them to keep whatever control they think they have, and keep the security of BlackRock's support, making sure BlackRock can always bail them out in an economic crisis. Nobody wants to get on the wrong side of these sorts of companies. This is probably why President Obama's former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, Jason Furman, claimed that the president's power over the economy was limited because most of the factors influencing the economy were from outside sources. That is some pretty powerful insight there. This is one of the most accurate things said in government. Most Americans presume the president has a greater impact, and they tend to blame the president for bad economic issues. It seems almost obvious that the president can change the economy, but it's really not that true. The real factors influencing the economy are the Federal Reserve, global markets, private sector, and legislative constraints. The Federal Reserve affects policies on interest rates and inflation control. Global markets affect energy prices and foreign exchange rates, and this impact reflects international levels which are already clearly out of US control. The private sector consists of companies just like BlackRock, who for the most part are never influenced by policies, which is leading to a clear picture of the deep state. The deep state seems to be the people with the real power in America, a collection of unelected bureaucrats, intelligence agencies, military personnel, high-up investment funds, and other government entities that are referred to as the deep state. These influences all work within the government and often impact a more targeted agenda like national security. They will delay, obstruct, and alter decisions made by the president if they believe that it will jeopardize national security. But of course, they have their own agendas apart from this. They control mass surveillance, drone warfare, military intervention, regardless of who the president is. The CIA, FBI, and other internal organizations all act in their best interests outside of public accountability. A great example of this is when President Jimmy Carter wanted to withdraw US troops from Korea in 1978. He intended to save billions of dollars, and he referred to it as trimming the fat. His position faced immense resistance.
They're forgetting a key third intelligence agency, and that is the NSA, my friends. Don't forget about Big Brother. Don't forget about him, man. You know, these right here, yeah, Big Brother. You know, and he's, as they say, he's always watching and listening.
The CIA report contradicted his theory, and many military officials even suggested that if he did withdraw the US troops, it could potentially cause more war. In the end, President Jimmy Carter was overruled, and this happens time and time again. The deep state will influence US foreign policies, sometimes independent or contrary to the elected government's agenda. Even President J.F. Kennedy indirectly warned about the deep state in his speech about transparency.
There is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment.
The US government's revolving door is the movement of personnel between roles as legislators and regulators, as well as members of the industries affected by the legislation or regulation. This revolving door is very often how policy and regulation get captured as insiders use their knowledge, experience, and contacts in government to advance private interests. Thousands of former officials resigned to enter private companies, often in the same field they once supervised and licensed. On the flip side, a company executive may become an official in the government. This can help to get industry insights into government by appointing private individuals. Today we see this all the time where business executives and lobbyists end up taking positions in federal agencies or state bodies. And one of the most observed repercussions of this is that many who spin through these continuously revolving doors end up as lobbyists, and they stay in the government for far too long, lobbying for policies that help their new employers whilst
abolish career politicians, and then a lot of times what ends up happening with these career politicians is they have major insight into the inner workings of the government, how to get bills and legislation passed, how to work with these lobbyists and these monopolized companies who have a great deal of influence over our governance. And what they end up doing after retiring is they go work in the private sector for some of these companies. Yes, essentially selling our secrets to these companies. And Trump tried to combat that by saying you have to wait a certain amount of time before you go into the private sector. And he got some pushback from that from people in our government, because that's exactly what they do. That's the game plan. So it is dangerous to think that you can become a career politician, have insight, a great deal of insight into how America works, to a certain point, and then to a certain point, go and sell the secrets, almost compromising the American citizens and the process of our government to the private sector, and still stand to benefit and still stand to make money. But that's what a lot of these politicians and these career politicians do. That's why I say career politics is almost evil. You should want to get in and get out, with the concept being of helping and improving, versus get in and stay in with the concept being of profiting and becoming a millionaire.
using their past front as government officials, and because of this they have significant leverage in getting bills passed. This leads to a bunch of conflict of interest situations, where these officials are prioritizing corporate interests over what is best for the public. And with these giant companies and private interests, and their ability to hire former officials, means they then gain favor with favorable access to policymakers, sidelining smaller businesses and the general public as a whole. It's basically just corruption with extra steps, as this creates a lack of accountability which is needed to create a stable, effective organization acting in the public's best interest. Now, recently some states and the federal government have implemented calling off periods during which former officials are restricted from lobbying their former agencies. These are measures to reduce immediate conflicts of interest, but they often face challenges.
It's exactly as I said, and I haven't seen this video, so I'm just imparting my own knowledge of the system on you guys. But yeah, that's what people do. They'll work in politics for 10, 20, 30 years. Obviously, you know the game. You know the ins and outs after working in a system for 20 years. And then you go essentially sell the secrets of said system to the private sector. You go to a Raytheon and you tell them our secrets, selling out the American people, selling out the system just for a buck. It's deplorable, really. It's shameful. And like I said, a lot of these career politicians need check. And that's why Trump speaks on it directly. The enemy from within, drain the swamp. He's talking about people who sit in here with their own personal interests, working against the interests of the American citizen. Like, what are they doing for us besides lining their own pockets? And more of these politicians need to be held accountable. And you can start to imagine why he gets the pushback he does, because he's challenging these people's money. He's challenging these people's position. These people have made a career off of doing so. These people got in with the idea like, man, I'm going to be a politician for 50 years. And now Trump is challenging that very concept. Yeah, it pisses a lot of folks off. It pisses a lot of these people with standing in Washington off. So you can understand why people try and go after this man, why the DOJ tries to go after this man, while political opponents try and go after this man, while he's been vilified in the media. And I'm not sitting here defending everything Trump does, but you got to understand when you attack certain systems, you're going to make an enemy. There was one man who said, when you attack these intelligence agencies, they got 6 ways till Sunday to come back at you.
Challenges related to enforcement and compliance. It's just as easy to tell another employer exactly what to do and say in their absence, so you can see why these restrictions are ineffective. The way the system is set in America makes sure that even the president is definitely not in the most powerful position, and rightfully so. The founding fathers foresaw this, and they could see that if the wrong person gained this position of power and was allowed to do what he wanted, they would inevitably become a tyrant, or just the position itself would attract tyrants. And of course, this would completely ruin the Constitution and all the ideals of the American spirit. The government allowed—
And it's exactly like we said earlier when still reacting to the political, I think it was the Piers Morgan panel. But yeah, we have checks and balances. We have a constitution to disable anybody from coming in with that concept, tyrannical government, being an authoritarian. I'm sorry, it's damn near 6 o'clock over here, yo. I'm trying to do my best, but yeah, there's a whole system in place, and our founding fathers conceptualize it to disincentivize that from being done. And again, it's the allure of power. So you might have somebody come in and think they can do that, but it's the checks and balances that ultimately halts anybody from doing so.
Allows the president to be a key player in foreign policy as well as a commander-in-chief, with executive orders and appointment powers, but even these decisions aren't really his own, as it must usually be signed off by the Senate or Congress depending on the area of interest. Some of these decisions need fast action, like responding to threats, and as commander-in-chief, the president has significant authority over military operations. The president's power to appoint federal judges, ambassadors, and key cabinet officials will also have long-term impacts on his administration. These are some of the people who will either oppose or offer full backing to some of the most important decisions the president has to make. But when you stand back and look at the much bigger picture, it can easily be seen how those in the background have more of an impact than the public ever knows. For example, if some giant Wall Street investment fund now has the ability to have a seat at the table where the president's decisions are being made, it shows a shaky foundation of what the original Constitution intended. This is a breakdown in the system created by modern times that certainly favors towards corporations and their agendas and not the public's best interest.
And that's actually an extremely scary thought, to think that the people who are in control, we don't see them. We don't even know their names. Like, sometimes you got to kind of go up the chain, like do your own independent research to kind of figure out, okay, well, who's the head of this company? Okay, well, this company is lobbying behind this politician. This politician pushed this bill. Like, oh, that's when you start to uncover the chain. That's when you start to uncover the direct link. And a lot of times you have to put that together for yourself. That's not what they're going to tell us on CNN. Shit, they're not going to tell us that on Fox, on either side. That's why I always say it to you guys, and I really want to drill this point home. Being a critical thinker in any regard, in any avenue, is so essential in today's time, because while this is the age of information, this is also the age of disinformation. Just as much accessible facts are out there, there's just as much accessible lies out there. So it's so important. It's so important not to just take whatever narrative that's purported from the news, whether it even be YouTube, whether it even be our stream. Do your own independent research. Make sure you fact check the facts, and you'll be a more enlightened individual for doing so. And it's too important now. We don't need people walking around with false narratives, filling up their head, thinking they know something. That's how people are misled. That's how they get you, so to speak. So please, I implore you guys to do your own independent research and make sure you're informed. This is the stuff that you wouldn't believe the first time hearing it, but the more you kind of delve into this information, you're like, well, damn, nothing is as it seems.
In each decade, many presidents have warned about certain things encroaching on the power of the president. Eisenhower warned against the growing power of the military-industrial complex.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
John F. Kennedy pushed back against intelligence agencies and their complete power over America. And now if you look at the last two presidents, you will really see no change in focus. Donald Trump invoked Drain the Swamp, which was intended to eliminate corruption within the government. However, while in power, his administration saw more influence from corporate America and extreme defense spending. And it's been no better with Biden and probably won't get better for a very long time. That's not—
understand this. While we are Trump supporters over here at this channel, I mean, that doesn't make us MAGA, that doesn't make us Trump dick riders, whatever. But, we support Trump over Kamala. Understand this, there's a system in place. There's a game that you have to play. There's a way to play the game that you have to play to even be in the race. Understand what I'm saying? You can only think about this. Trump is an outsider in the sense that he's not a traditional politician, and see how much flack he's getting. You have to play the game a certain way to even come into prominence. So while Trump says drain the swamp, and then if you maybe look at it, he still took a lot of money from lobbyists. There's a certain way to play the game. Understand you're not going to be able to come in with your own methodology and just be like, oh, I'm switching everything up day one. No, it doesn't work like that. This is a concept that has been around since the inception of American politics. So you have to find a way to circumvent that while still holding true to the American values, the American system as we know it, the political system as we know it. And you have to be able to find a way to, like I said, circumvent that while still imparting your own beliefs, imparting your own thoughts, or any change you want to enact in the system. There's just a way to play the game. There's just a way to play the game. I don't come in, I don't come into somebody else's concept and be like, all right, well, we're doing it this way now. Like, nah, that's a concept that was set up for however many years. You have to find a way to work your way into the game while also still imparting and enacting your own views. It's a very tricky thing to do. And shout out Trump for even trying to take the challenge on, because a lot of folks just find it easier to come in the game and play it how it's been played, make their money, retire, sunny house on the beach house on the side of the sand, right? That's what most people do. I commend Trump for already having the background in entrepreneurship, so he doesn't need the money per se, personally at least. But again, I just want to hone this point into you guys. There is a way that you have to play the game. There is a way that you have to play the game. You don't get into politics. You don't come into prominence. You don't even get a chance to run for president without shaking hands with certain people, essentially laying in bed with certain folks. It's just how it is, right? These are the kingmakers, so to speak. These are the people who control our political landscape. So you have to be in agreement with them to a certain degree to even entertain the thought of being president, or the thought of being congressman, or the thought of being mayor. There's politics that surround every facet of America. And you have to learn how to maneuver and play the game, so to speak. I know I've said it like 10 times, but yes, playing the game is important if you even want to have a chance of changing the system. You got to get in a certain way.
Not to say that you shouldn't vote. Voting is incredibly important. It's the foundation of democracy and your God-given right. But it's clear that no real change will happen overnight, and the web of power controlling the United States is becoming more vast and serious than it's ever been before. Once we all realize this and highlight the truth, can real change begin? And remember, Conflict of Nations is a free online PvP strategy game happening in modern global warfare, where you can choose your own strategy, engage in epic battles, and take over the world.
All right. Hopefully y'all enjoyed that. I got a video from Gerard I want to share real quick. We will go through the full video on tomorrow's stream. I just want to bring up a little bit of it. Shout out Gerard, one of the longtime supporters of the channel. I'm going to get right into it. But man, as we close out, make sure to share any closing thoughts, questions, comments. $1 or more super chat. I'll go ahead and read it aloud. And again, shout out Gerard. Let me pull this up just a second. Hopefully everybody's enjoying the stream. It's about 6 a.m. local time, so definitely winding down. If I'm slurring my words, understand I worked a 12-hour shift and then came to stream with you guys. So It's been a day. It's been quite the day, actually. But man, I love what I do, and I'm glad I'm able to share this with y'all. And I'm glad y'all enjoy the content as well. And I'm glad we've been able to curate a community with this type of information. I wouldn't call us a right-wing channel. I would just call us a truth-seeking channel. But yeah, let me get into this. Just a second, chat. Oh, okay. Shout out Gerard. He says $20. He says yes, please play it tomorrow. Man, we appreciate the support, Gerard. I'm gonna give a little taste, a little teaser, real quick before I close out. A little teaser, man. A little teaser, because it is good stuff. It is good stuff. So I'm just gonna give a little teaser. Kind of give you a hint of what we'll be getting into tomorrow or today on today's stream later. Shit, when you do it like this, man, your days start to run together. Nah, I appreciate that, Gerard. Always showing support. Appreciate everybody else, man. If you got to head to bed, man, appreciate y'all being in here rocking with me, man. I love y'all. Go ahead and get some rest. I'm about to close this one out and get some rest my damn self. Just wanted to share this with y'all. Let me see. If you're headed to work, man, have a good day. Go make that money. Vote Trump. No tax on overtime. All right, let's see. I got it right here. Let me refresh. All right. Shout out Gerard.
Party. And this is one of the reasons why I decided to join the Republican Party and what I shared with.
Special shout out to the mods, man. Y'all make this shit possible. Y'all regulate the chat. Y'all keep it going. Y'all are all very I would say well-informed, well-versed. That's why we kind of picked y'all out. Y'all add great commentary, add a great element to the show. So again, shout out all the mods, man. Every single one of y'all. And again, this is Tulsi Gabbard kind of detailing why she joined the Republican Party, giving a little bit of insight on that. And this will kind of be one of the main chunks of tomorrow's stream.
President Trump was, we talked about the transformation of the Democrat Party, but I think it's important to also talk about the transformation of the Republican Party. And this is one of the reasons why I decided to join the Republican Party, and what I shared with President Trump was really specifically because of his leadership. We saw a Republican Party that used to be almost uniformly the party of warmongers, now have a president who in the last 3 elections has been much to the ire of the Dick Cheneys and John Boltons of the world, gathered the support of the American people who are sick and tired of these stupid wars that have taken so many lives, so much of our taxpayer dollars, and have been counterproductive to our own safety and security and our own liberty. Bobby talked about the Patriot Act. When we talk about the cost of war, yes, really it's in 3 major ways. It is the cost of human lives, the lives of our brothers and sisters in uniform. It is the cost to us as taxpayers. But as with every major war that we've seen, there is always a cost to our liberty, because we have people like George W. Bush and Dick Cheney who said that unless Congress supports the passage of the Patriot Act.
Weapons of mass destruction. Oh, we need to invade their country to, see what they got. And lo and behold, they had no weapons of mass destruction. So funny, but how many people lost their lives in pursuit? How many American soldiers were ultimately caught up in casualties of wars? How many came back over here with lingering health, medical, PTSD issues? Is very sad. And how our country uses the military industrial complex to ultimately fund itself. And we've seen that a lot, and that was kind of the stance of the Republican Party. It's shifted, I would say, in the last 8 to 12 years, especially when you consider Trump as their main running guy. But that has been their stance. And George W. Bush is probably the best example I could think of in my lifetime, where it was just war. And then even when when asked, like, hold on, I thought this was gonna be something quick and quick and painless. Like, we're losing lives. Soldiers are coming back fucked up. The response on his administration and other prominent government officials was telling when the war lasted 20 plus years. So just to give y'all some food for thought, something to think about as we close this out, man. I definitely appreciate everybody's support, man. Yeah, man, I it was a fire stream. I hope that everybody learned something, or everybody was able to take a piece of information and give you something to think about. Appreciate everyone's support, mods especially. Viewers, if you were able to like the video, what have you. But special shout out to the following, man. We got Gerard. Appreciate you, bro. Always showing support to the channel, man. We appreciate your loyalty. Riley Small, you're always pulling up as well, man. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and give you that mod status, bro.